Everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are, welcome. We are so glad you're here. I'm going to take a second to kind of set us up, and then I'm going to ask my colleague and friend Scott to share some of his thoughts on AI governance in the age of, in the AI revolution within our beloved industry, which is the nonprofit sector. My name is Ann Murphy. This is the AI Empowered Show. We've decided we're a show now because we said so.
Congratulations on that promotion.
Yes. And what we do is on Thursdays at 11 Pacific, we talk about AI governance in the nonprofit sector. And on Fridays, I do a workshop on use cases, whatever's coming up that's a new tweak. Like we talk about prompting, we talk about custom GPTs, we talk about the fact that everything is the worst it's ever going to be on this particular day. So join us for that. And then we also frequently have events on Saturdays called Weekend GPT Jams, where people who love AI just come together to kick it and talk about everything. We learn how to use Midjourney. We talk about our favorite resources. We talk about the existential face melting nature of AI, and sometimes we cry. So if that sounds good to you, just reach out to me. Let's see what else. Oh, my business partner is in the chat, in the comments section. So as we go, Donnie will drop, websites for you. If you have questions, that's awesome. He'll be there to answer them. And like I said, welcome everybody. So I want to kick it over to Scott, but first I'm going to give a little bit of an intro because he shared something really interesting with me, which I bet a bunch of us on the call can relate to. So, fun fact, Scott was a mental health therapist and for a stint in his career. And what he shared with me is something that resonated with me and made me think maybe I should go back to school. Is that training and those experiences have helped him be the successful leader that he is in the nonprofit sector. And like I said, a lot of us, I'm sure, can relate to that. And like in my case, where I've particularly found that to be true is in my one-on-one work with donors. I'm so underprepared for some of the conversations that we get into. And I wish I had at least taken more psychology classes in college.
I mean, you just shared that your AI parties on Saturday lead to crime. There's got to be some therapy going on there,
yeah.
right?
Right. So we're a peer support network. Scott is the associate vice president at Donor Search AI, which is one of the very trusted companies that lots of nonprofits, I think 100 or more.
We have Donor Search has 10,000. Donor Search AI has over 100 nonprofits that we're building custom AI models for now. Yep.
Incredible. So like I said, super trusted group, a thought leadership voice in our industry. He also co-hosts with Nathan Chappelle, a new podcast. I think you guys are 8 or 9 episodes in.
We just recorded our 18th last week. I think we dropped the 16th episode just yesterday.
Okay, so I'm behind a little bit. I listen religiously and often in binge sessions. It is a delightful podcast, a wealth of information, delivered with a lighthearted, tone. You guys are hilarious. Nathan's dry sense of humor goes a long way. So that's the Fundraising AI podcast. And Scott I'm almost done with his accolades. Scott is also one of the leading voices behind fundraising.ai, which is an initiative I'll ask him to share about because it is so cool, and building the framework for responsible AI in fundraising. So, Scott, what did I miss?
I think that's enough for right now. I think you covered everything, but definitely everything that's important to today's conversation, right? For Fundraising AI, this, for those of you who don't know, this is a volunteer organization that was started over a year ago. And actually, I was with Nathan Chappelle, the founder of Fundraising AI, when he bought the website. He has a maybe known, unknown hobby of collecting websites. He just told me about a new website he purchased the other day. But he bought Fundraising AI 6 years ago, knowing that it was going to be something, but not necessarily certain what it was. Right? 6 years ago, he and I had started another company where we were building machine learning models for nonprofits. So we were already kind of in the space, but obviously there was no ChatGPT, there was no generative AI, there was no LLM, not like what we've been in now for the last year and a half, almost 2 years. So the conversations were a lot different, right? When we talked about AI, we had to do a lot of education on, you're already using it. Netflix, Apple, Amazon, Google. Every time you go online, there is some AI going behind the scenes, but it's that predictive component that kind of flies under the radar, right? Doesn't really get all the glory that the generative AI or the excitement that generative AI has gotten over the last year and a half. So fast forward, and after the launch of ChatGPT, conversations exploded, right? Everybody, AI was the buzz, the top of the talk, and everybody knew that they had to start something. They had to start asking questions. And some of the questions were, is it going to take my job? Is it going to replace me? So a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, and conversations had to happen. And also at the same time, responsible AI was a new topic, but that was driven by the government sector, by the for-profit sector. And so Nathan really saw that if we as nonprofits and the nonprofit sector do not define for ourselves what responsible AI is, beneficial AI is, then someone's going to define it for us. And they're not going to define it with our intentions at top of mind, right? We're going to be an afterthought as a sector as a whole. And so we need to make sure that we are establishing our conversation. We are defining what we consider to be responsible, beneficial AI for nonprofit fundraising, and driving that conversation. And also just in a larger scope, be a resource for nonprofits on this conversation that is AI. What do I do? How do I use it? When do I use it? And should I even use it in the first place? So
absolutely.
It's a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving pieces, but all with the intent of making sure that it's a go-to place for conversations, go-to place for resources, and that we can do our part to just help the nonprofit sector have a place to, kind of center around this conversation.
Absolutely. And I want to let folks know that like the 90 people / entities who've been involved with the framework for responsible AI and fundraising, and Donnie will drop the link to that in a second. We're just like normal, everyday colleagues of yours, and you should feel comfortable reaching out to me or Scott or Nathan or anyone else, which, you probably have people in your network who are involved with this. Like, we want to talk to you about this. Like, this is something that we wake up in the morning thinking about. And oftentimes, like in my case, like Ethan Malik, who's like one of my very favorite thought leaders, he says, if you're not losing sleep, you're not doing it right. And when we think about stakeholder trust and the fact that, that is our literal only thing we have in the nonprofit, it is absolutely essential. In the absence of stakeholder trust, we don't have much to show. And P.S. hot topic is that, the conversation between Charity Water and Simon Sinek recently, where they unfortunately talked about overhead as being problematic. Right. It's a perfect example of the chilling effect that things can have on stakeholder trust. And that was one podcast, right? Yeah. So if you think about the imperative for those of us in the nonprofit sector to be focused on, all of the tenets that show up in our framework, like data security and privacy, explainability and transparency, bias, continuous learning, legal compliance. I missed some things.
Impact, sustainability. I mean, it's an evolving document. So it's just like the conversation is evolving. We're constantly trying to reevaluate and make sure that it's hitting the needs that are currently going on.
Absolutely. And one really good time and place for sharing feedback is going to be around the upcoming Fundraising AI Summit, which is the
Hmm.
second one. And is that on October 1st?
October 1st, yes.
October
Last
1st.
year, it was a 2-day summit. There were two tracks. There was a practitioner, there was a platform. So, kind of vendors had one, and nonprofit employees and staff had another. But this year, it's going to be one day conversations on and coming in on, are you a level 100? Are you a level 200? Are you level
Hmm.
300? So that you know where to go, what track to, what sessions to sit in on based on your level of comfort and experience in artificial intelligence. So we really, again, that's another resource, right? We're making sure that we have speakers coming in to talk to different use cases, talk to things to questions you should be asking your team, your staff members, vendors as they come up. How can it be
Hmm.
used? How can it be applied? What does it mean to me as a nonprofit staff member? So this is really where that summit is intended to go. Last year we had, I think, over 6,000 attendees from 85 different countries. So it is a global summit. We want everyone's voice to be heard. We want everyone's voice to be represented. And we're very excited for the second one. The theme is Generate Good.
Generate good. Absolutely. Oh my
Mhm.
God, it's so good. So good. So good.
I can't take
So
credit for it. We have a team. But very good.
um, so, for those of you who are just joining us, we're talking about some of the resources that are available to you as you learn about AI governance in the nonprofit sector, and encouraging you to reach out to us, attend events. Continuous learning is part of the framework. So, know that yes, this is all starting up, but that you do have colleagues who are out here on these AI streets helping you use AI responsibly in the nonprofit sector. So let's start off with a shared definition of what we mean when we say AI governance. Scott, what does that mean to you?
So to me, it's really just setting a guidelines and principles about how AI is to be used, what is the ultimate goal of it, and what needs to be thought of, what needs to be discussed, what needs to be decided on, or at least conversations started to have decisions on what are we doing and what are we not doing with this, right? AI is not a silver bullet. AI, just the fact that you adopt AI does not mean that all your problems are going to go away, right?
Yeah.
And you need to think about things leading up to adopting AI. What is your use case? Not every AI, there are many different tools. It's like many different tools in a toolbox. You're not going to use a hammer to put a bolt into a deck, right? I'm maybe not a handyman, so I'm probably not the best person for analogies there, but I think you get what I mean, right? Like you need to know the tool that you're looking for based on the use case that you want to address, right? And
Yes.
then, well, what's the data leading behind that? Artificial intelligence obviously relies on a lot of data. Where does that data come from? Are you using external data? Where does that data come from? What are the sources? Is it biased? Is it sourced ethically? Who is tracked in it, but also who is not tracked in it? What's missing from it? So there's a lot of questions.
Oh, what's
And the
missing?
governance policy is really just a starting point and decisions made on what are we doing, but it's also not set in stone, right? It needs to evolve, right? And I often try to make a comparison because AI governance as a topic just seems very large and
Yeah.
broad and concerning, right? Like we need to figure it out, but how do we figure it out, right? But when you start a new job, you and I were talking about this earlier, Ann. When you start a new job, you're given an employee handbook. One person didn't write that employee handbook in a day, right?
Right.
That went through multiple iterations. There were topics in there that were not originally in there when that organization started, right? So things like on how to use technology, right? Conversations about computers, about calculators have all been the same thing that we're talking about using AI right now. And that all started somewhere. So it's really just about starting somewhere. And again, that's a resource that we want responsible or we want fundraising.ai to be. Use it as a template for a framework for your own internal AI governance. And there, feel free to reach out to us because there are nonprofits who are currently underway with this and who have gone through it already, established their own governance policies based on what we're driving here and what we're including in this framework.
So I want to kind of follow up on that in two areas, because I am delighted with the interest nonprofits have had, and particularly in my case, individual nonprofit leaders coming to me and saying, I got to figure this out. Can you help me figure this out so that I can be a better leader, so that I can, and at the time they usually don't even know about the framework. They don't know about, kind of like a step-by-step build an AI council, and it's working. Like, what I want to say is, this isn't, while we are in the early phases, and there's a lot of work to be done, and it will be cyclical.
Yes.
It's not going to be linear per se, which kind of makes it exhausting to some extent. Getting started, it's like that phrase of, you can't steer a parked car. All you got to do is be moving like 1 mile an hour, and you're doing it. So what I tell people is, the first meeting of your AI council, or the first thing you do with your AI council, does not need to be some big proclamation that you're going to have an AI council, and here's everybody who's going to be on it, and here are the days that we're meeting, and here are the milestones. It can literally be, put a meeting on your calendar, call it, inaugural or whatever, kickoff for the AI council, and sit with the framework and review it, and, give yourself time to do some deep thinking, and consider, even because all of the stakeholder trust stuff starts with us as individuals, consider even, what is your own personal code of conduct. And I'll share that for us, we did a session a couple weekends ago about AI images for, nonprofits and for solopreneurs, small businesses. And it was a moment for a bunch of us to decide, are we the kind of person who, when we're making an AI image, we will say, put a photo or put an image up of an Andy Warhol piece and say, make me an image of a can of mushroom soup instead of tomato soup, and make it just like Andy Warhol? Or we're the kind of person who will say, describe Andy Warhol's, artistic style to me, and then ask for it to make something? Or we the kind of person who would say, hey, I'm interested in something along the lines of what Andy Warhol does, some popular cultural items, some, bright colors. And this time I would like it to be in an image of, a dog with a birthday hat on or something. And that kind of self-reflection, it's, like I said, it starts with us. Like, what are you cool with, right? Like, what level of checking for bias are you okay with? Do you have self-awareness of what you might not catch with bias? And I've had a few real light bulb moments myself, and it's given me the opportunity to really actually refine my, understand my own unconscious bias for, like, what I'm missing, was something I don't catch. So that is one thing I wanted to share. And then in the corner there, we have a QR code that goes to, like, if you ever wonder, like, what is an AI strategist? What does an AI consultant do? Because I didn't even know before I started in this. I was like, what is that? I don't know. What's AI operations? I mean, none of
Trial
us
by
are out here.
fire.
Trial by fire. None of us are trying to out
Only
here
way we
trying to say
learn.
we're experts, right? Click on that, or point your, camera at that, and it'll take you to a deck that describes some of the things that we do. Let's see. So we've defined AI governance. Talk to me a little bit about, do you have any predictions about AI adoption, AI governance? Where are we now? And what is, like, where will we be in a year, 2 years, 3 years?
Honestly, I think, because it's not just the nonprofit sector that's trying to figure it out, everyone's trying to figure it out, right? There's no set framework given to us by the US government, right? It was in the last couple of months, I read a news article that India pushed through their responsible AI guidelines, and then they recalled them about a month later because the for-profit execs said that this is too stringent. We're not going to be able to compete. We're not going to be able to do our business following these guidelines. The EU came out with theirs, and that's a 4 to 5 year plan, right? So, like, everyone is still just is having these conversations because they know it's important, but no one has the definitive answers, right? When
Yes.
we talk about the framework, it's a starting point. It is a resource, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that your framework needs to look exactly like this or follow it to a T. It's just something that should be discussed, some topics that should be thought about, and how does it apply to your organization? So I think that in a year's time, I think responsible AI is still going to be a hot topic. AI governance is still going to be a hot topic because it's still, what does that mean? How does that apply to us, right? But I also think that AI adoption is going to significantly increase. That what how we're seeing and using AI now is going to be wildly different by the end of the year, right?
Oh,
Agentive
yeah.
AI is coming out. There are tools, Multion, Rabbit R1, like all these different tools that are starting to kind of trickle out that are leading into that agentive AI. And what I mean by agentive AI is instead of going to ChatGPT and saying, "Hey, I would like you to, put together this paragraph on why nonprofits should use responsible AI," agentive AI is almost like a team of each of those tools that can come together like a whole network, right? There are examples. Ethan Mollick is a great use case of this, of agentive AI, that he asked it to build code, build a website, and then offer the code that he built as a service on Fiverr.com and post it. And it can do all that. Like, it is not one tool that, or one tool he did for the website, one tool he did for the code, one tool he did for posting on Fiverr. It does it all because it tasks its own AI. So
Yes.
that's not far away, right? And it's how we're talking about generative AI right now is just going to be kind of a given that everyone's using it, and then agentive is going to be the next hot topic. We're actually in conversation right now about, well, how do we address this in our framework? Because we do want to be a couple steps ahead so that we aren't lagging behind and not that resource that we really strive to be for nonprofits.
Along these lines, and so, future lineup of things for us to talk about. I was just trying to find the website. I found a company that is already having agents hire humans. They're
Hire
already there.
humans.
Yep. So the AI is hiring humans. So, I
Yeah.
mean, where does it start and where does it end? We have no idea.
Yeah.
But what I'm very heartened by is that there seems to be an awareness that running out and just implementing a whole bunch of tools is not the answer. And I do have this like beef with some of our thought leaders in not nonprofit industry, but elsewhere, who are saying that AI governance is a form. Oh, you and I talked about that on
Yeah.
email.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It's
if
not.
I hear I'm sorry, but if I hear one more person, one more really important
Yeah.
thought leader say, "Oh, I have a form for that. Oh, there's a form
Right.
for that." I'm like, "It's not a form. This is
Not a
people,
form.
process, culture." And the notion that you can just, I mean, it's like any other change management
Hmm.
where it's got to be pretty deep work and conversations at all levels, which can we talk about that for a second? One of the things that I'm intrigued by with something like an AI council or a framework is the opportunity to deconstruct some of the hierarchies in our organizations. Because, let's say you have a couple board members on your AI council and you've got the ED, and you also are going to have the frontline users. You're going to have the people, you're going to have IT, IS, you're going to have the development officers, et cetera, ideally, right? You got to have a cross section of the organization. And sometimes I think we're seeing where, at least in other industries, I'm seeing where AI is going into ITIS or advancement
Yeah.
services or whatever, or HR.
Yeah.
And what I think we're kind of working against here is the notion that we don't understand that AI is a generalist, right? Like this is the revenge of the liberal arts. Like this
Hmm.
is for everyone. So I was wondering if you could comment on like who all needs to be involved in building an AI governance infrastructure in an organization.
Right. Well, I mean, it goes right back to the title, right? It's a AI governance council. It's not an AI governance person, right? It's not one
Mhm.
person who's making this decision. You want to just like, I mean, we talk about use cases on AI and how to, and like practical, how do you go in? What do you do with it? How do you learn? It's all about collaboration, right? You need to, when you're bringing in this council, you need to have subject matter experts. You have representatives from all the different areas, those who are supporting it with the data, those who are supporting it with the technical infrastructure, those who are using it at the end, even if they don't know anything about the actual AI, but they're going to be the ultimate end result. Like when we build our models for nonprofits, during the onboarding process, it's a lot of talking to the development staff, that's data management, prospect researchers, right? That they're the ones who are sifting the data, sorting through the data, and they're the ones that we're helping with our tools. But really, it also goes to major gift officers, right? They're the end result. Physicians for Grateful Patient, they're the end result. And no matter how successful a model is, it'll live or die with the people who are going to end up using it. There's the CEO of Data Robot, I believe, said that 70% of AI, of successful AI implementation, rests with people. It's not the data,
Mhm.
it's not the algorithm, but it's all,
Yep.
back to your point, it's all about change management. And so you want to get those different perspectives from all different teams. It should, HR should be included, IT should be included, but it shouldn't just be HR, it shouldn't just be IT, it shouldn't just be one team, right? We need those different perspectives, those different conversations to talk about, well, where is this data coming from? Is it ethical? Does it really meet our need? Is it driving our mission that much further? Are we doing it the best we possibly can? And have, again, those roundtable conversations to hone in on something. Doesn't need to be perfect, doesn't need to be immediate, but have some structure to at least start, and then iterate and iterate and iterate.
Okay, so did you hear that, everybody? It's for everyone. And like for me, using myself as a guinea pig, I just totally want to prove to you for a second that you do not need to have a technical background to be in the AI sphere at all, or part of a governance conversation, or test user, or working with vendors, or anything. So here's
Right.
my background. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in leisure studies. That is my literal degree. I am a leisure studies alum, so clearly non-tech. I am Gen X and grew up in the era where there were two families who had computers in their living rooms, and we would, it was my mom and the Ogrins, and we were always over at either one of the houses to play Carmen Sandiego or Oregon Trail.
Right.
Um, when I went to college, I brought a word processor, like a brother word processor. And when I was a junior, I'm sorry to belabor the point, but I just want to drive home. You do not need to be like a technical
Mhm.
background. Um, I'll never forget my friend Suzanne and I, because remember, there used to be computer labs, because there was like, now, everybody had to go to a place to use the computer machines. You're younger than I am, so you probably had, more, you probably, yeah. Anyway, um, so we were like, is it on? I'm not sure. We're crawling around on the floor trying to find, like, where do we plug it in? Like, and I'm not trying to be all like, oh, I'm a girl, I don't know STEM stuff. Not at all. But I'm just saying that having a technical background, if I'm going to go out on a limb for a second, sometimes I see that having a technical background leads to the curse of knowledge, where
Mm.
like a
Mm.
non-technical person in this conversation, I'm always going to understand the beginner's mindset. I'm going to remember the day when we were at AFP and I had to ask the whole group, what is NLP? I didn't know what natural language processing was. And that was less than 2 years ago.
Mhm.
You just like, you're a gift. You're a translator, if anything. And you're also a vote of confidence to people when you're non-technical, because you're out here with your vulnerability and your curious mind, a willingness to make mistakes in public and raise your hand in front of all these important people and say,
Mhm.
what is NLP? You can be out there, and people will appreciate that you're willing to speak up, even though you may not feel initially that you have the chops to do it.
Right. And you're never going to find yourself as the least technical person in every conversation,
Oh my
right? So
God, you're
it's
so
all
right.
different levels, right? So you ask what you need to ask to feel comfortable, and those
Right.
questions other people probably already have in their head but just don't feel comfortable asking,
Yeah.
and then you open up that opportunity to have that discussion elsewhere. So I mean, a lot of what we're talking about right now is for the people who are ready to jump in or know that they need to jump in and don't know where to get started. But there's a whole population of anti AI
Mm.
sentiment, right? I talked about this on the last episode of the podcast, but I'm a huge fan of Logitech. I have probably 5 keyboards, 6 mice, 2 cameras, and too many things, right? I'm just a techie. But Logitech just rolled out in their new software integrations with OpenAI. So you can click on a button on a mouse, it'll open up a
Oh, I
window and
want
have
that.
six.
Yes.
It's beautiful. I love it. Um, but you can click on a copy text, click on a button, and it'll open up a window and have 6 different recipes. Draft an email, summarize this, rephrase this in more complex or more simplistic language. Like it is everywhere. And I was looking at the suggestions for it, and most of the suggestions were get rid of this AI nonsense. Nobody's going to use this AI BS. Like people are threatening to inflict harm on themselves rather than use AI. So there's we're in a very small echo chamber of people. There's a whole, and that's not nonprofits, right? That's
No.
everywhere. There's this fear, right? And that's where a lot of the therapy comes in, right? Everyone comes in with their own perspective, their own thoughts, their own uncertainty, insecurity, and AI is not going anywhere, right? Just like you don't have to be a technical person to use a computer, you're using it one way or another. It's just are using it to the advanced level of super techies or just logging in to send out an email. Like you don't go a day without using your computer or your phone, right? That's how it's going to be with AI and definitely generative AI and the near term.
Yeah. Yes. So everybody, that I know that most likely everybody on the call right now is in on AI at least a little bit, enough to be curious about
Mhm.
learning more about AI governance and coming here hear Scott share with us. But it's just I want to share another one of my mantras is that when we're in this space, so first of all, to everybody out here, you are now officially, congratulations on the you're leading on the jagged edge of the AI revolution,
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
are like among a tiny percentage of the world population that's paying
Yeah.
attention to all this. Like, kudos, keep up the good work. And what you're going to find as you continue in this realm, if you haven't already, is that there's an extraordinary need to call upon your empathy in these conversations. Because if you're anything like a lot of the folks who've been in this, like Scott, you've been in it forever. Like what happens, at least in my case, is I start to assume that other people are in the bubble with me, that other
Mm.
people are also like just chomping at the bit to start using AI stuff, right? Particularly with generative. And they also, of course, forget that predictive has been around for a long, long time. And that, like, oh, are you just going to stop using your wealth screenings? Oh, okay, cool, cool, cool. You're going to do your job without that. Okay, you're not doing AI. I get it. But I get cynical about it like that, because I get like impatient, because I'm like, I'm here to tell you it's not going away, and that your life is going to be so awesome if you start using this stuff like for fun, for play, for writing, for making planning family trips, for organizing your closet, for figuring out what you're going to have for dinner by taking pictures of your refrigerator and your pantry, but also for having the opportunity to build stakeholder trust, right? By giving
Mhm.
people a better experience as donors, by empowering yourself to better communicate with your donors, to be a go-to source for them. Like, this is a huge level up in your career.
Mhm.
And as you get into it, you're still going to run into, like, your uncle over Thanksgiving dinner, and people on the street, and your friends who you thought were really, really smart are going to be
Mhm.
saying, oh no, nope, I don't use AI. And you have to kind of be nice about it, because eventually they're going to come on board, and you don't want to be the person who was like judgy. I'm also
Yeah.
talking to myself about this when I say these words out.
There's all soft. Yeah.
It's so hard
Yeah.
not to. Just only when I'm like having only when I'm hungry, only when I'm
There you go.
hangry.
There. And I mean, that's acceptable, right? That's acceptable. But I think to your point, like one of the questions that comes up often is how do I use it? How do I even start? Right? You know what is a great way to learn how to start, or a great resource to learn how to start using AI? AI.
Yeah,
Just
AI.
open up, go to chat.openai.com. I don't think you need to have an account anymore. I think you could just use it
No, you just
freely.
go from your
Yeah.
web URL.
Yeah. And you just say, this is who I am. I'm a prospect researcher. I'm a, grant writer at a nonprofit that serves this mission. How can I use generative AI?
Ooh,
And
yeah.
it might not all be perfect, but it's going to be that, again, it's all about starting that conversation. It's going to give you
Yes.
something to build off of, right? You don't, the rule of thumb that we often talk about is, and it might have come from Ethan Mollick, who we probably reference every single time we have our podcast, but
Have
he
to,
is a
yeah.
great resource. So everyone should be following him on
It's
LinkedIn if you are
just
interested in this.
amazing.
But for the things that you don't like doing, I don't like writing. Writing is not my thing. I like numbers, not as much of a fan on words. The things that you don't like doing, give it off to generative AI, let it do the first draft, and then you edit and revise. For things that you do like doing, you do the first draft, then give it off to generative AI to edit or revise,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
brainstorm, or get different perspectives. So don't I've heard people say, I really like writing, and I asked ChatGPT to write this thing for me and it was miserable. Well, it's because you are good at this. Not everyone's good at that. So offload the things that you aren't good at, that you don't want to spend your time on. And the real value, I mean, there's all this talk of efficiency and results. The real value of generative AI is giving you your time back to do the things that you do want to do, or do the
Yes.
things that you could do better than artificial intelligence.
Yeah. And that you do better than everybody else. Do the
Mhm.
things that only you can do, and like making more time for spending time one-on-one with donors, of course, but also the things that light you up versus the things that kind of chip away at your soul, right? I always start my
Yeah.
workshops by talking about, well, first I make everybody vow that they will never put confidential information into ChatGPT. I make everybody say it out loud. I make everybody put it in the chat. It's a vow to one another that until further notice, we
Mhm.
will not believe any of the la 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 about
Mhm.
how our stuff is not going to go out into the world. Just so everybody can sleep well at night, and we don't have to like, we don't have to really refine it. We just say we're not going to put confidential information in ChatGPT. But oh God, what was I going to say? What were you saying right before?
We were saying, well, now I'm
Oh
just
yeah,
thinking about
yeah.
how you
Oh
make
yeah,
that
yeah.
vow.
Oh yeah, yeah. About the writerly thing. So
Yes.
um, I love using AI for content. I do. I love it. I love it. I love it. And over time, I've figured out all these hacks, and I'm talking about some of them tomorrow to really do some excellent writing with AI, like excellent, not B minus, not B, A minus to A. And that's delightful. However, nonetheless, it is still the least interesting part to me of how we can actually use AI. And what I really lean into and encourage people to, because it doesn't require very much like, prior knowledge, is ask ChatGPT, think of ChatGPT as your super smart intern that is ready to run through a wall to please you, but also is pretty clueless. Like you have to tell
Right.
it what to do.
Right.
You wouldn't say, to an intern, go plan a homecoming event. They'd be like, what even is that? Right. So then you'd be like,
Mhm.
okay, so first thing you're going to do is we're going to think about what are we trying to accomplish? What's our goal? So when you go into a conversation with ChatGPT, you're like, hey, ChatGPT, I need your help with a project today. And here's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to come up with the desired outcome for a homecoming event for alumni. What might
Mhm.
that be? And you just talk back and forth. And one of the things I love about doing that, from the point of view of somebody who has imposter syndrome and who tends to be hypervigilant and over preparing is my love language, is that I can work through my really bad ideas first with ChatGPT. It's not judging me, right? Like get just the dumb things that you don't want to say out loud. And then I feel more comfortable sharing my ideas because they've been a little bit vetted.
Yeah.
So using ChatGPT as your thought partner for me is just like, bliss.
Yeah.
And you can use it for therapy a little bit. I know you probably might caution against it, but some basic therapy questions you can work through.
Yeah. I mean, it's good at navigating relationships, right? Like this is just not an example that I've gone through, but you could go in and say, "Hey, this is a fight I had with my friend. Like, this was what's going on. I'm not like, tell me how to resolve this. Right now, it's very uncomfortable. Like, we aren't talking. Like, just use it as someone to bounce ideas off of. That you don't have to be afraid or embarrassed or worried about feedback or worried like, oh, they're going to judge me if they hear that this is what's going on. Like, there is none of that in generative AI. And back to your iterative part of it, right? Like, or your intern part of it, just like you would have an intern try to craft that how to do this homecoming event. You wouldn't take their first draft and say, oh well, this is garbage, I'm just going to do it, right? You would say, all right, mark it up, here's some things that we could do instead. I'd rather kind of take this part of out of it. Here's some other things. No, we're going to have 500 people instead of 2,000 people. So it's all about that iteration. The more Malik again says 10 hours of using it, and then you really understand how to use it,
10
right?
hours.
10 hours and use it in as many different ways as possible. My favorite tool is Perplexity. I mean, I
Oh,
have it open right now. Ever since finding out I'm not using ChatGPT as often, I'm not using Claude as often because it's all in there, right? You're getting access to GPT-4. And what I love about Perplexity is it gives you the sources, right? So that whole concern about hallucinations, you can verify everything that you're seeing. It doesn't mean that it doesn't get it right, but it offers you the links. Maybe the links don't always work, but when they do, you can use that as proven, verifiable information. So it's just a great tool for me, it's my go-to for writing, for researching, for brainstorming, for anything. And you can build GPTs in it on its own kind of.
yeah. So I have a perfect example. So, hi, Aaron. This is my dear friend Aaron, who is known as the Tech Whisperer on TikTok, and I highly encourage everybody to right now go over and follow him. And Aaron, if I put the wrong handle on there, will you correct me? Aaron is a perfect example because when I first met him, I was like, I don't even know. He's so smart. I don't know the words he's using. I don't want to waste our precious FaceTime together to ask him for definitions of words. So I would be like, what is a locally hosted LLM? And then I learned from being in conversation and also being a little bit vulnerable because I don't think I have fooled Aaron into thinking I know what the hell he's talking about half the time. But he's got videos where he shows us like this is the direction that things are going, and you may have one of these things in your closet. And I had to learn about that, and I was able to do a little bit of research. Like Perplexity is so perfect for that kind of thing because if I did that research on Google, bless their hearts, I would get 15,000 ads for those server things. I don't care. I don't even know what they are. I'm not going to buy one right now. So
Mhm.
Perplexity doesn't make us, sift through all that stuff. So I'm also a very, very big fan. Um, the AI governance component of what Aaron is sharing is really interesting too, because this could be so when Aaron, I'll botch this, but when Aaron talks about a locally hosted LLM, this is a closed circuit so that you are working like with the thing that's in your closet and nothing is going out into the where the other large language models are going to be trained on that data. It's never going to go out into the public internet. It's going to stay in your own little world. So it's a lot safer. You have more, integrity about your data and your data security and privacy. And for some of us, that is going to become increasingly important. I've been
Mhm.
talking to, I was talking to Nathan the other day about how as a consultant, my clients keep sending me spreadsheets by attachments of
Mhm.
donor information with everything, wealth, giving,
Yeah.
engagement, whatever. And I'm like, well, Nathan told me like what the protocol is for me to say to them, which is in keeping with our commitment to data security and privacy, I'm deleting this message And I recommend, here's a confidentiality policy. I'll recommend a workshop, and I will say you need an SMT secured file, SFTP.
SFTP.
Yeah, you need an SFTP, and here are some ideas about where you could host your data, blah, blah, blah. But these are the kind of things that we're going to end up thinking about. Even if we don't end up needing them, just knowing that that option is out there, that there are options where, let's say you are absolutely fanatical, like you cannot accept the popular, offerings of security in a large language model, there is an option. You could go right ahead and get your own LLM in your house if you wanted to. And if you do, you should definitely talk to Aaron because he knows everything about that. What
All
is
right.
this, Donnie? Aaron McMahon, educate on the limits of the technology, promote. Oh, yeah.
And
Oh, is this from YouTube, Donnie? This is an excellent point.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this is, again, with fundraising AI being that resource for nonprofits. Transparency is one of the most prominent features in our conversation, right? Like, AI should not be a black box anymore, right? AI should be, you are able to explain it. You are able to say why people are. Again, I work on the predictive side, right? So I'm going to be speaking more prominently about predictive side, but it's all for the same. You are able to explain why people have certain predictions versus other people. You can explain why the model is performing the way it's performing. You can explain what the top features are, and that's something that, again, at Donor Search we are fully committed to transparency. We the way we say it with our clients is, this is not our model that we're building for you. This is your model that we're building with you, right? You have full oversight into how it's built, into what's used. We'll guide that conversation because we've been doing this for so long, but we're not going to say, this is your model, that's it, no more questions. We get your confirmation that this is in line with your expectation, that it's promoting, that it's using features that are not biased, that are not that leakage, that are not overfitting, that are in line with how you would want to prioritize relationships with individuals. So transparency, I mean, that is, I could go on and on and on about transparency. Ongoing research and improvement, especially with AI. The thing that I think has led to a lot of confusion and uncertainty about AI is, AI as a field has been around since the 50s, right? But the definition of what it's solving for is constantly moving, right? It's just like, Anne Murphy has been around since whenever you were born, but Anne Murphy, when you were 1 year old, is a lot different than Anne Murphy now, right?
Yeah.
You're still Anne Murphy, but you don't look like that person. You don't act like that person. You don't think like that person. That's how AI is also, right? AI is just constantly growing and evolving. And so back when it first came out, a problem that AI was used to solve was play checkers, right? Now that's like, you wouldn't even think about using AI to play checkers. You're thinking about how to create new molecules, how to create new chemical compounds to address cancer, but it's still AI. And so it's this constantly like moving and ever evolving thing that we can't really wrap our hands around. Again, it's always been this black box for too long, so we don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. We just know it does stuff, and maybe it does it well, right?
Yeah.
I think there's also the concern about the limits on the technology. And actually, Andy, I saw a webinar or post that you did about a lot of challenges of, there's Boston Children's Hospital had a model to predict, triage and how they need to staff different departments. I might be botching it, so I apologize. But then another hospital used that same model. Well, that's never going to work, right? They saw inaccuracy because it wasn't designed for them. So again, at Donor Search, we believe in every model is custom. You are not like the same nonprofit that exists in the same city, state, sector, whatever it is. No matter how closely aligned you are, you have different data sets, different fundraising practices, different constituents, different donors, different paid, whatever it is. So everything should be specific to you and not generic of, oh, well, this is how all nonprofits perform. So, and then lastly, just foster open dialogue, implement and support robust reporting systems. Again, everything that we're building into the fundraising AI framework of, this is a conversation, this is something that, please collaborate with other people, talk to other people, ask questions of other people. We're all kind of coming together to figure out what we need to address and ask and focus on. Because again, what it looks like today is not going to be what it looks like tomorrow. The fundraising AI framework is evolving just like AI. We can't accept or expect the fact that, hey, we did it, we're done, all right, moving on to the next problem, and that in 6 months or a year's time, it's going to be impactful, because we're going to be in a completely different ballgame at that point. So it is this iteration, this constant research, learning, open dialogue, transparency. All of that is incredibly important, both in building your own AI product and using AI product when you're vetting vendors for an AI product, but then also when you're going through AI governance conversations, right? That transparency is key, collaboration is key, open dialogue is
Absolutely.
key.
I have been thinking about a lot of my colleagues in higher ed and how, come football season, right? When they're just hanging out in the parking lot with, alums and friends and parents, or in the skybox with board members, they are going to begin to need to respond to questions about how are you all using AI? And it's so important that everyone in the organization be able to answer that question. When we can't answer it, when we say that's exactly when we're starting to chip away at stakeholder trust. And what I would encourage is that while this stuff is not going to happen overnight, and you do need a very thoughtful and intentional process, that you start yesterday, because whatever the tipping point is in your particular nonprofit, where people are starting to spend time together and have lots of free-flowing convos and start to kind of a board meeting is a perfect example. It's going to show up on your board agenda really soon, particularly because we have the election coming up. So if you are like getting a little beehive in your chest about like, oh my God, what would I say to a donor or a board member if they ask me right now? That is your impetus to raise your hand in your organization and say, if you're looking around and nobody else is doing it, or get yourself on that committee to say, okay, I want to be prepared for conversations with my donors in my portfolio, because as we know, when we have we have close relationships with our donors and they ask us a pointed question, we don't get to backpedal. We don't get to say they are looking at every muscle in our faces to see if we are being transparent with them, right? We don't get to blah blah blah. We have to have an answer. And so I don't know if you have thoughts, Scott, on how you kind of socialize with your whole organization how we talk about AI, but I don't have any ideas about that.
I mean, again, there's no one set way of doing it, but it's starting Nathan talked about this on a recent podcast, baby steps, right? Like, what about Bob?
What about
movie,
Bob, my favorite movie
right?
of all time, with his
Yeah,
goldfish? Baby
yeah,
steps to the door.
baby steps.
Baby steps to the steps.
You just have to move, right? You said it earlier. You can't steer a parked car. Like, you have to start somewhere. You have to see, are you the only one asking these questions? Are you the only one thinking about, are we going to use it? Maybe IT already has AI up and running and just hasn't informed anybody else, because that's how a lot of organization department works, right? Just in silos. So bring it up to the people that might have more connections with other departments. See if there are other people having this conversation. Bring it up in your department meetings. Bring it up to your managers, your directors. Get that conversation going. Talk about the importance of using it. I mean, it is going to get to the point where if you are not using AI in one form or another, it's a misuse of donor funds, right? Just like you wouldn't have
Thank you. Let's say that again for the people in the back. Say that again.
If you are not using AI in one form or another, it is a misuse of donor funds, right? Your donors are expecting that when they're giving you their support, you're doing the best that you possibly can. And again, this whole overhead conversation is putting a cloak on a serious topic, right? Like, there is overhead, but that overhead allows us to raise what's better, putting 80 cents to the dollar towards the mission if you're raising $100,000, or 40 cents to the dollar towards the mission if you're raising, $2 million, right? Like, being able to scale, you need that overhead to scale. But you also wouldn't hire a new team member and not give them a computer, because computers are expensive, right? and notebook and paper is much cheaper, so we're just going to keep our overhead down, your donors would be livid if they knew that was the case, because you're missing out on that efficiency. And so it's
Yes.
going to be the same
Can you
exact thing
imagine?
with AI.
It's like a bajillion times worse than if you told your board chair, you know what we like to do is get up out of our chairs and go and talk to each other for every single thing. We don't use email. Like, and your
Yeah.
board chair would be like, or no, you know what? We're not going to use a CRM. We're like any of these things, and then multiply it times a bajillion with the AI revolution, because it's like so much bigger than any of these things. It absolutely, we are responsible for running well-run businesses. Essentially, they are businesses. And when we don't use ubiquitous technology, there will be nothing we can do, nothing we can say that will make up for it, you know? So empowering. And also, we have to remember that for our employees, if we have a retention issue now, which of course we do, those staff who understand, who they have, 20, 30 years left before they retire, and they're not, quote unquote, allowed to use AI, and they're not getting training, and they're not getting access to tools, and they're being like hand slapped about it, they have to go somewhere else. They really
Mhm.
don't have a choice, because their careers are going to suffer for real, for real. Their
Mhm.
income is going to suffer. Their income earning opportunity is, I think it's, did I see somewhere it's like a $58,000 increase? I mean, it's
Yeah.
something, I have it written down. It's some huge amount of money that raises that you will get over time, because you know how to do
Mhm.
AI. So our staff won't even be able to stick around for this. So, not to be like super naysayer and scarcity mindset, but there is an element of scarcity here.
Right. There's a study that came out by Evan Wildstein and Michelle
Yes,
Flores, and right, the
Michelle
social
Flynn. Yep.
impact satisfaction report, I believe it is. And they
Yes.
said that they surveyed a number of nonprofit employees, and the number is going to be close, maybe not perfect, but 70% of them
25.
are
Yep.
75% of them are thinking about leaving their organization in the next year. 65% of them are not thinking about coming back to the nonprofit sector at all. And tied for the top reason is they're overworked and under resourced, right? And so I crunched the numbers. Chat GPT, $20 a month, any of those tools, $20 a month. That is a 0.5% equivalent to a 0.5% salary increase for the average nonprofit employee salary, right? And the
Dang.
percentage of efficiency that you get from this tool, you would not expect from a 0.5% salary. You wouldn't, people would probably be more pissed and just leave if that was the bump that they got, right? So it is a no brainer, and it's not just Gen AI. It's not just like it's you need to use a tool. You need to start somewhere. But again,
Yes.
don't just jump in to jump in. Think about what are your challenges. Think about where can you have the greatest impact. It's that Pareto principle. Where can you have the greatest impact
Yes.
with the easiest way to test, to start, to iterate, right? There's
Yes.
predictive, there's generative, there's thousands of tools out there. If you don't know where to start, reach out to people on Fundraising AI, reach out to the Fundraising AI LinkedIn page, reach out to people that you know are having these conversations, reach out to me, reach out to Anne, reach out to anybody else that joins Anne's meetings and her AI parties on Fridays, Saturdays, and Thursdays, right? You know,
Cry
there's
fest.
people that there's Cry Fest. There's resources out there. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to, it's not this, everyone has these questions. It's not overarching. You
Yeah.
just need to start somewhere. Just with baby steps.
That is an awesome pep talk. And as we wrap up, I want to ask you to do a recap of all of the fundraising AI and all that kind of stuff. But I really want to encourage people, if they don't have a friend or a community who's already doing AI stuff, like, even reach out just to me, because I have this growing and delicious and wonderful and amazing and generous community of people who like real I you're nice. I do have groupies. I only know I do because I know you're one of them, Aaron. And it's mutual. I just adore you. And everyone should, again, follow Tech Whisperer on TikTok, and you'll fall in love with them as well. Yeah, reach out to me. I mean, like, these people are so lovely.
Yeah.
It's not like the olden days of by the way, it's not like the olden days of women in STEM. Women, sorry, I'm just going to give my spiel for a second. Women are crushing it in the AI world.
Yes.
When I believe that generative AI is a women's world because
Yeah.
empathy, because we know the story doesn't stop with us, because we're used to looking around the corner, because yeah, we can send the elevator back down, and that's why we're here on this planet. So with that, Scott, talk to the nice people about all the places that they can get support from you and from Donor Search and from Fundraising
Sure.
AI and the podcast and everything.
Yeah. So again, Fundraising AI, Donor Search are independent. Fundraising AI is a completely volunteer organization driven by nonprofits, by for-profits in the nonprofit sector that address the nonprofit sector. It is a resource for nonprofits. It is building a framework for responsible and beneficial AI for fundraising that is constantly reviewed, constantly updated to make sure that, again, we're driving that conversation of what needs to be addressed, what needs to be thought about, what needs to be, acted upon in terms of getting started to use AI. So with Fundraising AI at the website, fundraising.ai, we have podcast. Nathan and I are talking every week. We're doing interviews with people in the space. We're talking about practical use cases, how to use it, things you need to know, things you don't need to know. We have the Global Summit, which is October 1st. We have all the videos from the first Global Summit last year that you can watch and access now. We have the framework for you to use as a template for your own governance policy to, again, start those conversations. Then Donor Search, we build Donor Search AI. We build custom machine learning models for nonprofits of all shapes and sizes. If you are a Donor Search client, you have access to an AI model that is you're already paid for it. If you have any Donor Search data, you're directly access to MLR, which is our AI model, similar to RFM, but on using artificial intelligence. Reach out to us on LinkedIn, reach out to me. I'm happy to connect with anybody, put you in contact with other people who are using our framework for their governance structures, and happy to have this conversation. Thank you, Anne, for this. And I'm hoping that this helps answers some questions, if not just start 100 others.
Absolutely. And thank you, Scott, for being here. For those of you who this conversation, as well as the framework and any other resources, will be up at this website that's right here. And you'll also find recordings of our other governance conversations and my Fridays, my teaching ones, and then you'll find event invitations there as well. So again, Scott, thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing for the sector. Everybody here, again, you are now officially leaders in the jagged edge of AI. And please, be in touch. And thank you and kudos. And we appreciate you all. Thank you for all the hard work you do.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Anne.